Now, if you could, close your eyes and walk with me. The year is 1982, and a teenager waits for the subway train in the Bronx, New York, heading to Lower Manhattan simply to buy a new pair of shoes. You see, 1982 for some of us seemed like a very long time ago, but actually, it really wasn't that long ago. It was a special year, a year when Survivor released their famous song, Eye of the Tiger. We know that from Rocky. And Jimmy Connors and Chris Evert won the US tennis Grand Slam titles. But 1982 was also the year that this teenager is waiting uptown in the Bronx, ready to get on that subway train downtown. She moves towards the edge of the platform, looking to see if the train is coming. When ever so subtle, she begins to sway. She feels a movement, a motion, as the train platform is wrapped in the arms of this city, swaying from side to side, as if trying to rock a baby to sleep. And then slowly, the train rumbles into the station. Like a time, like a moment, that is almost too big, too heavy, too large to support an event, a movement whose time has come. So she rides, and she rides. This train from uptown through Upper Manhattan, watching the neighborhoods transform like pages in a Life magazine that takes you around the world with each flicker of a photo generating a new thought. Watching the windows share transformable stories of neighborhoods that are as close as sisters, but as distant as a new movie premiere and its sequel. And then it all goes dark. The train has been introduced and taken the subway tunnel as its mate, a ride that many of us have taken beneath the city streets. And within a matter of moments, through a garbled PA system, there is an announcement that states, the next stop on this train will be Canal Street. And once again, the train rumbles into the station, like a time, like a moment that is almost too big, too heavy, too large to support an event, a movement whose time has come. From the subway station to the streets above, there is a resounding sound that is being generated, a sound that can be heard by this teenager as she walks past the shuttered clothing stores, past the closed businesses, and closer to Columbus Park, a park that sits along the edge of New York City's Chinatown. There is a crowd that is overwhelming, a crowd of women and more women. And this teenager pulls out her journal and begins to write. Calls for equality. To walk in the path of change, you must walk down the sidewalk of vulnerability. To ride towards the station of fairness, you must get off the stop of sacrifice. To support a cause that you believe in, you must simply show up when it matters. And when others speak through the winds of distraction, you must simply hold on to the rod of attention. Listen to the sounds of protest. They sound like a beating drum that some say is too loud. It sounds like a blaring horn that some say is but noise, but it also sounds like a beating heart within the womb of a mother that many will say it must be born. It is impossible to ignore 20,000 heartbeats. It is improbable that they will beat in unison, holding signs of resistance, messages of persistence, and calls to make you the same as her, you the same as him.
But there's also a very personal tie to us here at Puffin, who have always appreciated and understood and been part of the struggle for workers' rights. My father was a union organizer. My mom worked for a local and a union in New York City. and we cherish the role that unions have played. And it's an honor for us to be hosting this exhibit tonight. And we welcome you, and we're so happy to welcome you here tonight. Thanks.
People who work so hard to make this country work need to be recognized and understood and valued. My first husband worked for the ILGW as a union officer down south. He was organizing the women's garment industry there and spent every weekend in jail. We know very well how important a fight this is and how we have to support labor in every way that we can. So just thank you so much for bringing this show here so we can let people understand and know where labor stands in this country that's made it grow and be what it is.
Power of art and the power of history are the twin inspirations for LaborArts. LaborArts documents and builds on something that a lot of people call a culture of solidarity. And I think that's well exhibited in this room and by the Puffin Foundation. So what is that? A culture where many people go beyond the American dream of individualism and see hope in working toward the welfare of the whole. It's a culture that takes different forms, has moments of strength and times of setback, but it has helped us have laws, not always sufficient, not always enforced, that make us a society that tries to care for its ill and its elderly, educate its young, welcome newcomers, and create democracy in the workplace. So that's what we call a culture of solidarity. And it's a funny thing, when this culture of solidarity, which in significant part includes the labor movement, is strong, at the same time, when working people are united by shared experiences and values, it turns out that the coalitions and collaborations with artists are also at their strongest. So Chen is going to talk about the origins of this particular exhibit, but I want to mention two things first. One is an invitation. You are all invited to join us on October 11th when a memorial to the victims of the Triangle Fire, and just as importantly to the movement that came after that gave us exit signs and worker safety laws. That permanent memorial is going to be on the building, which is just off Washington Square, and it's a testament to ordinary people. It was ordinary people who made it happen. You'll forgive me for calling you ordinary, but some of them are in the room tonight. And I want to particularly ask Joel Sosinski and Andy Sosin to raise their hands. And they've really been on this project from the very beginning. It's a group of activists, historians, artists, garment workers, and family members who formed the Remember the Triangle Fire Coalition nearly 15 years ago, I think it is now. There were also ordinary people who stitched a cloth collective ribbon, which with memories about garment workers from the Triangle Fire and the industry throughout the century. And that cloth ribbon has been etched into steel and is going to be put on the building. And that's what the unveiling is about on October 11th. You all are invited. The second thing I want to draw your attention to in the room is the teeny photo over in the corner next to that large quilt is of a burning building. And it's a photo of the 1910 Newark fire. Now, a lot of you may have heard of the Triangle Fire. March 25th, 1911, 146 young immigrant garment workers were working in a fireproof building in a garment factory on the top floors. Doors were locked, a fire broke out, 146 young women were trapped, jumped to their death, or got burned up. That's the Triangle Fire tragedy that sparked this reform movement. 4 months earlier, there was a fire in a Newark garment factory. Young immigrant women working in the factory, doors were locked, safety precautions were not in place, jumped to the sidewalk. Firemen caught them in nets that broke and they died. The New York City fire chief said this could happen in New York. These conditions exist in New York. And sure enough, 4 months later, the Triangle Fire happened. So I guess I'm hoping everybody is inspired to do more in some way, and that you see this exhibit celebrating the power of art and the power of history. And I think it can take us forward. And I want to introduce Chen, my co-curator and collaborator on LaborArts. And before Asme is walking up, I just want to say that Evie Rich is here tonight, and she's a co-founder of LaborArts. And also Olenlik honoree.
Good evening, and in Union Talk, sisters and brothers, and happy Labor Day. I want to thank Puffin also for hosting this exhibit. It really looks awesome. And I want most especially to thank Rachel and LaborArts for kind of keeping this idea of history and art going and moving forward. I went to work for the ILGWU in 1983 after being an organizer for a different union and a supporter of the strike whose pictures you see on these walls in 1982. And I felt at that time in 1982, and I love, love, love the poem that you wrote. It's so beautiful. Back in 1982, I felt like I was a witness to history going to Columbus Park. And even more so now that 40 some years have passed, it really is something that belongs in our history books. I learned so much working for the ILGWU. I love that job. The people, the diversity, the issues, and the idea of labor solidarity in a real way that, as Rachel talked about. So it was a wonderful experience, and I've been retired for many, many years now, but I've enjoyed the experience of trying to keep this history alive. And so that's what I think is very beautiful about this exhibit. In 1982, almost every immigrant household in Chinatown had family members who were garment workers. I mean, it's just part of the neighborhood. And I still live in Chinatown today, which is very changed. But in those days, there were thousands of garment workers working in hundreds of shops. And so there are thousands of memories of that time. So I was in Columbus Park for the two rallies on those hot days in June and July 1982. And it was really electrifying to hear the workers' speeches. I was really hoping that our sister Alice Ip, who's in this picture, with her hand in the air and, usually it's her fist in the air, would be able to come. But she, like many of the people of that time, are fairly elderly and frail. And she has good days and bad days. And unfortunately, today was a bad day. And she went to have her hair done yesterday. But today she texted me and said that she just couldn't come. So I'm sorry to say that. But I've brought a couple of poems that she wrote, which I'll read to you in a bit. So just a little bit more about the 1982 strike. This was 40 years ago. And last year, we had this outpouring of activity and interest in this history. And I'm really kind of blown away by it because for me, and for a lot of people of my age, it's like, and when I talk to my kids, they just say, oh, Ma, this is like the old days, But most of these photos came from an exhibit held at Columbia University's Center for the Study of Ethnicity and Race. And we are very lucky to have a wealth of photos, videos, and other information about the garment industry, which flourished in Manhattan, and including in Chinatown from the 1970s all the way up to the millennium. LaborArts has played a key role in posting the photos and information online about Chinatown. And then there were more than a dozen activities and events last year, including a walking tour developed by Professor Dan Katz, who's in the audience, which walks through the labor history of Chinatown. And he actually did a tour this morning, which was kind of fun. There was a summer celebration last year in Columbus Park, which was the site of these major rallies to remember the experiences. And there were workshops and panel discussions online and in person. We also had a huge reunion of retired garment workers, a meeting that we held in Chinese at a senior center in Chinatown. And sadly, many of these workers are frail and elderly, and even in this past year, we've seen a number of people pass away. So that's very, very bittersweet to me, but kind of amazing that we have these images and are keeping the memory alive. So as for the factories, as you may know, globalization, real estate pressures, gentrification, and finally even the tragedy of September 11th led to the massive shutdown of the Chinatown factories. It's hard to imagine today that there were hundreds of these factories in the Chinatown neighborhood since Chinatown has just changed so tremendously. So I wanted to close by reading two of Alice's poems. She was born and raised in Hong Kong and came to the United States in 1976. And like a lot of the immigrants of that period, she went right to work in the Chinatown garment factory. And she was a born leader. And she writes these poems in Chinese, in a Chinese pattern of so many characters per line. But she did this translation herself. So she says, "Life could be easy, but may be hard. You must focus and follow your heart. Know your goals, where to go. Just make sure you have the right role. Come along, let's sing the song. The union can make you strong. We are one. Be the one and get things done. Solidarity to everyone." So that's Since Alice is not here, I thought I'd ask Professor Amy Chen to come up and just say a word or two. Her mom and family members, many of them were in the garment industry.
My grandmother and my mother were both garment workers in the New York City Chinatown, and growing up, I did not know much, but I knew that we had the things we did because my mother was in the union, and the word union was a good word in my family. And it's rare to see people in your family who you think are just, mom and dad, transform into political actors who made demands and occasionally wins. It's very inspiring to be here, learn about this history, and consider myself a part of it as well. And now I teach Asian American Studies at Vassar College. My position was a result of student activism, demands to learn about their own Asian American history, and I've been able to teach them this history as well. I hope we can bring this and have it travel all over. I think it's a really important history that we should all be learning and teaching.
I just want to remind all of you that this exhibition will be up until the end of November, and we will be having many concerts and events, and a lot of people are going to be in and out of the space, so the photos will be seen. I'm here during the week as well, and people walk in and they ask questions, and we always tell them the story behind whatever exhibits that we have here. And as the staff, I know Andrea as well, we love sharing that story. And I know that we're gonna have a lot of fun sharing the story and the history that's being that's told through these images. And so we thank you for that privilege. And without any further ado, I'm gonna turn the stage over to our musicians. Thank you so much.
We're continuing to really unearth a lot of the folk music, but also the communities around it, some of the musicologists that were responsible for bringing these songs to life. This is sung by Phil Oakes about the history of the labor movement. Come you ranks of labor, come you union corps, and see if you remember the struggles of before, when you were standing helpless on the outside of the door, and you started building links on the chain, and you started building links on the chain. When the police on the horses were waiting on demand, riding through the strike with the pistols in their hands, swinging at the skull of many a union man, as you build one more link on the chain, as you build one more link on the chain. Then the army of the fascists tried to put you on the run, but the army of the union, they did what they'd done. Oh, the power of the factory was greater than the gun, as you built one more link on the chain, as you built one more link on the chain. And then in 1954, decisions finally made. Oh, the black man was rising fast from the city, and your union took no stand, and your union was betrayed, as you lost yourself a link on the chain, as you lost yourself a link on the chain. And then there came the boycotts, and then the freedom ride, and forgetting what you stood for, you try to block the tide. All the automation bosses were laughing at their side, as they watch you lose your link on the chain, as they watch you lose your link on the chain. You know when they block your trucks, boys, by laying on the road, all that they are doing is all that you have shown, that you've gotta strike, you've gotta fight to get what you are owed. When you're building all your links on the chain, when you're building all your links on the chain. And the man who tries to tell you that they'll take your job away, he's the same man that was scabbing hard just the other day. And your union's not a union till he's thrown out of the way, and he's choking on your links of the chain, he's choking on the links of the chain. For now the times are telling you, the times are rolling on, and you're fighting for the same thing, the jobs that will be gone. Now it's only fair to ask you boys, which side are you on? As you're building all your links on the chain, as you're building all your comes from a traditional tune that a lot of folk music was based on traditional melodies. And this was originally a song about John Hardy. Woody Guthrie used it for a lot of his songs about Tom Joad. Phil Oakes took it and wrote a song about Joe Hill. So it's about, I think, about an 8-minute song, but we've cut a lot of the verses out. So this is a bridge version of The Life of Joe Hill by Phil Oakes. Sweden shore, looking for some work to do, and the Statue of Liberty passed him by as Joe come a-sailing through Joe Hill, as Joe come a-sailing through. Oh, his clothes were coarse and his hopes were high, he headed for the promised land. Took a few weeks on the out-of-work streets before he began to understand. Before he began to understand. And Joe rolled on from job to job, from docks to the railroad line. No matter how hungry the hand that wrote, in his letters he was always doing fine. In his letters he was always doing fine. Oh, the years went by like the sun going down, slowly turned the page. When Joe looked back at the sweat upon his back, he had nothing to show but his age. He had nothing to show but his age. Headed out to the California shore. There things were just as bad. So he joined the industrial workers of the world, because the union was the only friend he had. The union was the only friend he had. Strikes were bloody and the strikes were black, hard as they were long. In the dark of the night, Joe would stay awake and write. In the morning he would wake them with a song. In the morning he would wake them with a song. And he wrote his words to the tunes of the day, along the Union line. The strikes were led and the songs were spread, and Joe Hill was always on the line. Joe Hill was always on the line. Oh, Utah justice can be had, but not for a Union man. Joe was warned one early morn, there'll be one last singer in the land. There'll be one last singer in the land. They lined Joe Hill up against the wall, blindfold over his eyes. It's the life of a rebel that he chose to live. It's the death of a rebel that he died. It's the death of a rebel that he died. So wherever you go in this fair land, in every Union hall, cracks along the wall. In between all the cracks upon the wall, it's the very last line that Joe Hill wrote when he knew that his days were through. Boys, this is my last and final wish. Good luck to all of you. Good luck to all of you. We have time for one more. We'd like to also, I think everybody knows this, so please sing along with us. It's, again, a song that went through many, many different, long evolution, but this is Woody Guthrie did a version called Union Made. And I'm sure you know the chorus. It goes, oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. There once was a Union made who never was afraid of the goons and gangs and company things and the never been made to praise. She went to the Union Hall when the meeting it was called, and the company boys come around. She always to the ground. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. The Union maid was wise to the tricks of the company spies. She'd never be fooled by the company's tools. She'd always organize the guys. She'd always get her way. When she asked for a better pay, she'd show her card to the company guard, and this is what she'd say. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. One more for Pete Seeger. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. Thank you very much. Thank you, Puffin. Thank you, Andy.